Welcome back to the It's Only Kids Football podcast. This is episode 2 of our special 6-part series in partnership with Little Kickers, dedicated to making you the best coach you can be. Now, look, my co-host and assistant manager Mike Clark and I haven't got a clue that to make sure you're actually getting expert advice, we've brought back our specialist from Stronger Youth Brands, Director of Curriculum and Training, Laura Mellor-Bachman. Today, we're diving into how to design activities that build skills, confidence, and curiosity. Let's get into it. Laura, we're back again. You absolutely intrigued us the first time. We're going to learn so much more. And, when we were talking about this, like setting up this series, you were saying it's not long enough to discuss the topics. And that was evident from the first one. I learned a ton. Looking forward to getting into this one today. We're going to talk about designing activities, building listening skills, confidence, curiosity on the pitch. So one thing that we talk about a lot on our pod, and we are actually coaching older boys, but I am starting with my youngest, who's 5, going to be 6 soon. But we coach 9-year-olds, whatever age they are. How do you get kids to listen? This is the ultimate challenge. What a playful ways, rather than being a dictator, to get their attention and build listening skills.
Oh my gosh, this is like the loaded question of loaded questions. It's going to be different things for different children, just because they all have different interests. But there's little things that I think every coach learns along the way, and sometimes it's just about time and experience with different children. There's things like changing volume, and that doesn't mean just getting louder and louder. Sometimes it's about getting softer and softer. Sometimes it's about using gestures. One of the things that we talked about on the last episode is that we all learn through our 5 senses. So if we're constantly only giving auditory cues, that's one sense that we're affecting. And so when we can use visuals, which is why we try to do sign language at young ages and things like that, is because we've added another element. It's tactile, it's visual, and it's auditory. So now we're hitting 3 senses. So anytime that you can build in sensory to when you're giving instructions, the deeper that learning is going to go, the more connected children are going to be. So there's simple things like that, like doing like difference in volumes and gestures. But I think this is also where coach individuality really needs to shine the brightest. And what I mean by that is everyone's going to have their own little idiosyncrasies, things that they do, funny things that they say, quirks that they have. A little known fact about me is way, 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 way back, I thought I was going to be a music teacher. And I went to school for music. And I love singing. And so you better believe, even though I never went down that path, I sing on the soccer pitch with children. And it's not just about singing songs. It's about I'll sing the directions. Okay, everyone follow me. It doesn't have to be a song. It can be silly. But what it shows is my individuality, my quirk. And they're like, she's wacky. I'm already here with her because she's wacky and I want to see what she's going to do next. So I think that sometimes it's not just about techniques and tactics. It's about who you are and how you connect with children. One other thing that I think is really important to talk about, though, when it comes to communication and getting children to listen, which I think a lot of people, it's pretty controversial and people get nervous when we talk about it, is touch. And I don't mean tactile like what I was talking about with sign language, but touching a child on the shoulder gently to get them to listen, or, tapping them. Those kind of things go a long way, especially with neurodivergent children, especially when you have children, whether diagnosed or undiagnosed, with things like ADHD. They need that to recenter and regulate. So I don't want to underestimate that either as something that is extraordinarily powerful to getting children to cue in. Eye contact and physical touch is a big, big deal. Appropriate, of course, but it's a big deal for getting children to cue back in and recenter.
What about when one of the kids constantly slaps your head because you're bald, Laura? Because that is what happens when they...
Are we talking about your children, Ben?
No, it's a boy on our team. It's a boy on our team. He's a lunatic, but we love him. But no, to go to your point, I think that, when you give a kid a high five, or, you get down to their level to talk to them, and maybe you put your hand on their shoulder or their back, and you go well done, or like you say, appropriate, obvious, but those that you form a connection. You're letting them know that you're there for them. You're safe. I'm here for you. I'm on your team, kind of thing. So I do think those matters. It's obviously important to get it right, but yeah, no, I can see the value in that. And me and Mike, Mike will be able to speak to this. Is body language is like a massive one for me and Mike, where we would be saying one thing, but our body is saying the complete opposite. And with young kids, what's funny is you can't trick kids. They know. They absolutely pick up on it. And that with my son, he would be sort of confused, almost like, you're saying that, but I'm not actually convinced because your body's telling me something else. So I think, you had experience with this as well, Mike, right?
Yeah, 100%. It was, they make a mistake or they do something that annoys you, and you like your body just, you tense up, or you look away, or you huff, or you do something. But then they look over at you and you're like, no, don't worry about it. It's fine. Yeah, it's good. It's all good. They know, and my son's called me out on it loads of times for doing that. And the thing with that is the emotion is there. Right. And that's what we always say. We never demonize parents. We never demonize coaches for it. As long as you can identify that that's wrong and then try and better it and try and improve. So the feelings they're not just going to disappear overnight. But the more experience you get, the more years you put into this thing, the more you listen and learn and adapt the way that you are, the more you will probably really shelve the body language, physical body language, and let the good stuff shine through. But I think, to your point around authenticity, I think that is so true. I think Ben and I are quite authentic. What you see off a pitch is pretty much what you see on the pitch. But sometimes the demons inside come out on the side of a pitch. It's so bizarre. Like the reason that we started the reason I wanted to get involved in the podcast in the first instance is that I'm super laid back. I was the kind of fun uncle to my son, we just have fun all the time. And then we get onto the side of a pitch and I wasn't that person. I just don't know what happened. Something just came over me, and it's just, I didn't like who I became. I just really didn't like it. And I didn't understand why I was putting all this pressure on him and why I felt so bad and annoyed and angry all of the time. And that's why we started just talking. And Ben was really similar. It's like, why are we like this? What's going on in our heads? What's going on in their heads? Surely this isn't right. And I think that just connected with so many people because they're in a similar boat. But having conversations with you and other professionals that we've had, it really genuinely helps because you start to really understand what's going on in their head and what's going on in your head. And then you can start to make sense of it, as opposed to just, I don't know what's going on. It's chaos all the time. Let's just keep going with it and let's see what happens. Because that's what's happened for decades, especially in England with grassroots football.
Yeah, I think that also with the ages that you both coach, especially, there's a lot of problem solving skills that can be taught, but also taken advantage of in sessions. So level setting with the kids on what they think appropriate things look like or how they can learn best. And they may get creative on you too. So that you're saying, okay, if it's a listening time during the session, how should we have that look? And then they can set that course for you when they're of an age where it's appropriate. I would say like no younger than 5 is even pushing it. But when you have kids that are the age that you're coaching, I think that they can help with those things and they can help problem solve it with you rather than making it an issue that you have to solve for. Involve the group with it. And even if it's where you're talking to children individually, if they're part of the issue, like if there's 3 particular children that aren't listening and it's routinely those same 3, addressing it with those 3 and saying, what do we think that we can do? I want to make sure that you're playing with us. We're really excited to have you here, but I want to make sure that when it's time to listen, you're with me. What can we do? What can you do? What can I do? They can have those conversations with you. The younger ages, you can't do it as much. So you have to problem solve and try to figure out what is going on with them to re-engage them, and also recognize like can they still listen effectively and be at the other side of the room, or can they still listen effectively and be hugging mom? Like in some cases it can happen, but so I think that that's something else that I would challenge coaches to do too, is utilize the children and help them to use that skill set and help problem solve with you.
We definitely found that, so just to go back also, we had a coach, Saul, who come on, my personal football coach, and he spoke about creating a character. It was he actually learned how to coach in America, and his mentor told him, when you're coaching, you have to become a character. You want to be your authentic self, but you need a personality, because that's the way the kids will engage with it. And another thing that we learned was asking kids questions. So you are coaching them, but you're getting them to listen, because you're involved with them. You're not talking at them, you're talking with them. That has been a massive advantage for us. And we would get to do silly things as well. By the way, I take it very, very seriously. So it's hard for me to be silly. But we would say to the kids, before a game, what do you think we need to do to win? And we'd, say some serious stuff, but then they'd shout out, we need fart boosters to run fast. And we're like, okay, right, we need fart boosters. It would pain me to go through that, but I was like, okay, well, at least they're listening. At least they're listening, and they're having fun, and they're enjoying it, and they feel part of the reason that what we're trying to do. And the 3 years that I coached the older ones, now doing back to the younger ones, has been huge. I'm at a different spot because of all the stuff that I've learned through having conversations with people like yourself. But when I first started out, I wasn't in that spot, and that's why a lot of mistakes were made. Are there any strategies you'd have for say a kid doesn't want to participate, or they're not ready to do something, or they're struggling, they're feeling a bit timid and shy? Is there any strategies you would recommend to help build that child's confidence so that they feel confident enough to get involved and make mistakes and, have fun?
So I think that the biggest thing, and you'll hear this throughout any time that we talk about what children need. The best thing that you can do is work into small groups. And I'm sure that this is really logical to the two of you as coaches, working in small groups. But there's a specific value when you're talking about children in different spots in development, or with different social things going on, emotional things going on, is that it allows you to individualize a little bit more. So I'm sure in some contexts it'll make sense where you split by ability on the pitch, right? All the time. It happens. So what you can do is, whether it's ability driven where they're timid, or it's emotionally that they're timid, it's going to be far less overwhelming if we're in a smaller group and I can work with them instructionally a little bit closer. So that's one thing. The other thing is to find what their interests are. So in our case, we're talking about 3, 4, 5-year-olds. We're in Bluey world, right? I'll use that as an example because Bluey comes up all the time in our world. So if we can equate it to something that they're familiar with. So if you love Bluey and I'm going to pretend to be Bandit and we're going to cross this river with the river stones, here, come with me. We're going to try it together first, just like Bandit does with Bluey. And then Bluey's going to try it on her own. And those kind of things can also make a difference, just because they're like, I know that episode with the creek. You know that one? I know that one. So those little things like that can go a long way. So whether it's Bluey, whether it's a superhero, those kind of things can help a child go, oh, I'm the superhero in this. And they'll go along with you for the journey a little bit better. But usually that small group or individualization should be happening. And another scenario that can come up in that regard is, let's go back to the Bluey example where we're going to be Bluey and we're going to be jumping over rocks, and it helps us to work on whatever skill it is. Bringing in one friend to help them and do it side by side with them, or show them while we're doing it with them. And maybe all 3 of us are now doing it together. That really helps. The other thing that I would say with that, though, is that's not to the detriment of the group. So you have a whole group that still is scurrying around. And if I have to attend to one child, that makes it hard. The whole group should not stop what they are doing. If they are in an exercise where they're jumping over something, keep them all going. You can still do a sideline kind of thing. We call it flyby coaching, where we're just working with one child while the rest of them are still doing things. So we don't want to stop for a transition that I have as a coach that's not a transition for the rest of the children. I need to stop, regroup to help this child while the rest of everyone else can still be playing. So hopefully those are a couple strategies that help with getting that other child back in and involved in meaningful ways for them.
This episode is brought to you by Little Kickers, the world's leading preschool football franchise. If you've ever watched your child take their first kick of a football, you'll know there's something pretty special about it. In fact, my oldest son Alfie started his football journey with Little Kickers, so this one feels close to home. For over 20 years, Little Kickers has been helping children aged 18 months to 8 years build confidence, coordination and a love for the game through fun, high-energy football classes designed specifically for young children. But here's the exciting part. If you're a parent who loves football, enjoys coaching and has thought about building something of your own, Little Kickers could be the perfect opportunity. Little Kickers is looking for passionate people across the UK to run their own franchise, with the backing of an established brand that already has over 350 territories across the UK and 25 other countries. They'll support you with the marketing, technology, curriculum and admin. You'll just need to work hard and follow the playbook in your territory. You don't need to be an ex-pro or full-time coach, just someone who loves working with children, values community and wants to turn that passion into a rewarding business. So if you've ever thought, could I do this myself? The answer might be yes. To find out more, visit littlekickersfranchising.co.uk. That's littlekickersfranchising.co.uk. Start your own football journey with Little Kickers today.
And I know that a lot of grassroots football in the UK, you'd have a coach manager and then you'd have an assistant. You might even have a third coach. You'll have like a bit of a group around you. So I guess utilizing the other people and coaches around you to help that individual whilst the core group of the session is still being managed and coached by another coach. So you're kind of splitting up roles and responsibilities. And I remember so clearly my nephew at Little Kickers, that exact same thing happened. There was two coaches. One was running the kind of core group, but because my nephew didn't want to participate, the other coach came over to try and support, to try and get him involved. He used storytelling and managed to get him into the play. So yeah, I can see how divvying it up without being to the detriment of the core group can be beneficial. But when we talk about all of this, right, I think if the cynical mind that I had at all of this, because we've like I said, I was super laid back, really fun, wanted to just, my idea of the first training session would have been, let's just go and have fun and everyone run around and, we'll do all of this cool stuff. And then we did that once. Genuinely, I did that. I turned myself into what I called American coach, and I had your kind of energy, Laura, and I was very much like, let's everyone, just so much energy. I loved it. It just descended into chaos. And because it just didn't have that structure. And I think finding that balance between structure or disguised structure in some way, as well as having that playful, that kind of freedom for the kids. How do you balance that? And what are the kind of tips and tricks between having that playful side, freedom for the kids, as well as having that structure?
It comes to planning, really, I think is the bottom line on a lot of this. And I know that we talked about it in the last episode, that the better planned we are, the more that we can work with a lot of these things that may come up. So when you were saying that you did the one session where you're like, okay, just free for all. Well, when we do that, then we also give up the responsibility of like moving forward at all. It just doesn't exist anymore, which there's a time and a place for just free play too. Don't get me wrong. But that structure becomes really important. So play within a structure is how I like to think about it. So I'll give you for instance, one of the things that we really changed in the Little Kickers programming over the past year is that when they come into a session, they're greeted with a set up activity, but it is 100% their choice what they do with it. So we call it in education space, we call it provocations. So we set up certain things in the environment, whether it's an obstacle course or a certain way that we set up the goals or whatever it is. But we just invite them in for play. No direction whatsoever. So when we do that, it allows them to be free, explore, get creative, wonder about things, explore on their terms, practice. The kids that take themselves really seriously will just go into practice mode. and that's okay. And the kids that want to play, that's okay too. The kids that need their parents to help with warming up to the environment, great, jump in and play with your parents. But we've started this in what we call it as discovery play. We do that so that they're welcomed into the environment on terms that they need to be welcomed in on. But then the next part of the session is that we all transition to a very structured thing, which is introing the whole session. This is what we're going to do today. This is what we're going to talk about. We're going to go exploring with this theme. We're going to work on this skill today. These are the things that we're going to do. So we go from very, very little structure to very, very high structure. And then we go into a game where we're doing a lot of warm-up stuff. And it's very playful again. So again, loosening structure back. So the idea is that we planned for these kind of pieces of the puzzle so that children get what they need throughout the session. And you're not having to struggle with that, like, well, how loose do I get? How tight do I get? Am I being too stern? Am I being too... It's kind of built in because we planned it that way so that children understand that this is the expectation now, this is the expectation next, and that structure is predictable too. So I think that that's how you kind of get the best of both worlds in that, is planning for it.
I think me and Mike have had such a pertinent experience with regards to what you're saying. So one of the things that we hated was when we coached the older ones, we couldn't get there early to set up. The way the changeover on the pitches happened is we would get there as the other team was leaving, and then what would annoy us is obviously you put the footballs down, the kids go mental, they kick the balls everywhere, they're running off. It's like so stressful. You're trying, you're like, we've only got an hour, I've got to get set up. They're running everywhere. And what we didn't have before, which obviously ours is a little bit more structured now because they're older, but was like an arrival activity. So, and what we found was gamifying. So now we would be like, how many kick-ups can you do? Or we'd like say do 25 Iniestas, 25 step overs. So we're gamifying it, saying how many times can you do it? Another coach told us the other day, competition hides repetition. So to your point, like planning and but having the tools, and I've seen like the little kickers curriculum and the way the stuff is built. So like when you become a little kickers coach, all that stuff, it's having the tools, the language, and all these little things that you need as a coach, which a lot of volunteers, like when they come into like grassroots, they won't have. Having those things enable you to basically make things fun, but within a structure. But if you don't have the mechanics, if you don't have the language, if you don't understand that, like you're just going in, and to an adult, especially for someone like me I love spreadsheets. So chaos to me is just unbearable. I can't handle like kids going crazy. Like it just drives me insane. But when you give them a structured environment where they can be crazy, but it makes me feel more in control that they're doing something that has an outcome, everyone's happy. And I think that is kind of what you were explaining. That is my advice to any coach, would be to kind of follow that pathway and don't be as prepared as possible, because when that way, then you don't feel like the session's just going out of control, which happened to us a lot at the beginning. I mean, they still kick the balls everywhere and we lose footballs all the time. It still does my head in, but we're definitely getting better at coming to terms with it.
But I mean, Ben, you bring up a good point. It's that you anticipate that. Like, you know that they're going to come in and kick the footballs everywhere. So plan for that. Know what they're going to do and how they're going to want to explore those things. This is what we call, like in education, we call it the third teacher. It's a very Reggio Emilia approach thing, but it's the idea of setting up the environment for the learners. So if you know that that's what they're going to do, meet them where they are. And then it's not chaotic because you've already planned for it. You're the master plan. And that's what makes you the coach, is anticipating the needs of who you're working with. So, I mean, these are really core concepts that a lot of times we just don't articulate it, but we feel it. We know it's the right thing to do. I think the important part of that puzzle is the why of it. What was the thing that you said about the fart blasters or something like that?
Fart roasters.
Right? Like, okay, so how does that help us play the game better? I'm so with you on this fun journey. How does it help us play the game better? So like asking, why are you doing this? Like, what does it do for you to do this in the game situation or whatever. I don't know what circumstances would come up with somebody who's that like silly, playful, but try to drive it back to what you're trying to do and why it may not be the best thing to do to achieve that goal. And I think that that's where you hit where kids go, oh, I can still be silly. He's not telling me not to be silly, but he is telling me that this is not helpful for what I'm trying to do. And that doesn't do anything for me then. So I think that those are some things that can help. It's always going to be circumstantial, and you will always have that kid that you think about so very much, and they'll always be your biggest life lessons as well, even if they drive you nuts. And so trying to figure out like functionally what really helps and what works to set your environment appropriately will always help you to make sure that everybody has the same level of expectations, even if we meet them differently.
Just lastly on this episode, so like a lot of coaches they're planning the session, we've got the structure, we've had fun, and we want everyone to have fun, but ultimately we also want to know that while we've had fun, we've learned something, because while we're here to build our relationship with the game, we are also here to get better and develop so that we improve our technical ability. Is there anything that you would advise a coach could do at the end of the session just to see if this sort of intentional fun design within a structure has actually had an outcome that has sown some sort of learning into the child's brain?
Okay, this is going to sound really, really silly, but just asking an open-ended question at the end of the session. Like, what were you most proud of your accomplishments today? What's something that you did today that you didn't do the last time that you were here? What's something that you did to help a teammate? What's something a teammate did to help you? These kind of open-ended questions are so critical, because not only does it help them to reflect, but it brings them back to a repetition point. So it's basically like teaching the lesson again. So every single time we bring something up, what is it called? It's called the forgetful curve, the forgetting curve, I think it's what it's called. So I'm sure that you've heard kind of statistics around like if you don't use something that you learned within 24 hours, you lose like 90% of it. And there's all these statistics that are around that, right? They're all based on all these incredible studies that are still valid. But what it really tells us is if we don't come back to something repeatedly, then it goes out the window. So it kind of comes back to that example that we talked about in the last episode of like, why can't they? I know they know how to do this. Why aren't they just doing it? These are the kind of things that will help. So that recap at the end, it always feels like so rushed because you're like, everyone's tired and sweaty and trying to leave and I need a drink. And it is critical to learning. The recap reflection is a huge, huge higher order thinking skill. And repetition brings us back to the exact same place that we were when we were actually teaching it. And the more that we do that, the deeper learning goes and the more it sticks. So then same thing, next week you come back in your intro when you're starting your session out. Who remembers something from last week? What did we talk about? How did you help somebody? Right back again. So that is really where the stickiness comes, is bringing it back and making them reflect.
That's a good one, Mike. We don't do that at the start of the next session. That we always do the recap at the end. Well, actually, it's more me telling them what they haven't done right. But forget about that.
Getting the mushy American woman preschool teacher. This is where it's all coming in.
No, we do need it. We need it. It's too strict English at the moment.
I guess the only time we ask that is like, because we repeat session like drills, like say in 3-week cycles, we'll be like, who remembers this drill? What do you remember from it? Why are we doing this drill? Why do you think we're teaching you this drill? How does that relate to what you want to do in the match? So I think we do that. We basically end a session. We say, well done, everyone. Did a great job. This is the player of the match and a player of the training. And what did you all think of that? And everyone goes, yeah, it was great. Thanks. See you later. So I do think that they really hit home with what you're saying, like almost a recap at the beginning and a recap at the end, and it kind of sandwiches everything that they've learned. It kind of sandwiches it and it kind of compacts it into their brain so that hopefully they can start to remember it a lot more moving forward.
Yeah, and Mike, you said a really important thing in there that you do, so kudos to you, is the why. Why did we do that? when they can connect to that, then they're going to repeat it more frequently because they understand why it's important. And especially for the older ones, they should be able to cue into that. You should never be doing a drill where they don't know why they're doing it.
That is it for episode 2. Thanks again, Laura. Loads in the bank. I'm learning like a child. My brain is creating all sort of neural pathways right now. We'll be back next week for episode 3, where we're looking at shaping a child's confidence. We'll cover social interactions, confidence building, and how to use praise to recognize progress beyond just goals and skills. But don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and remember, you can watch all of the episodes on YouTube and listen to them on Apple and Spotify. Share them with someone you know that could really do with listening to this. See you next time.
If you enjoyed the podcast, please take 2 seconds to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss future episodes. And if you want to check out our previous episodes, just click here.